Much Ado About Nothing is a really interesting episode of The Simpsons, and while from the enjoyment perspective it's not one of my personal favourites, I think it's one of the most important because it deals with a really important and potentially controversial topic, and depending on how you feel about certain people, you might get a different viewing experience. It's the 23rd episode of the 7th season, directed by Susie, and it aired in August 1996. And despite the fact that this was in 1996, I feel like attitudes maybe haven't changed as much as they should have done. The reason it's called Much Ado About Nothing is because it focuses on Apu, and because of various things that are happening in Springfield, certain residents are trying to get the immigrants out. And Apu, being an immigrant, of course, is one of these people. And Homer, to begin with, is all like, yeah, Springfield folk for Springfield, until he realizes, and there's this really, really important moment where Apu has to explain to Homer, but I'm one of those people who will be negatively affected if you vote this way. And it takes Homer a second to realize that actually this man, who he considers a friend, is one of those people. And I think that that's so important because there are a lot of people who are all like, I mean, I'm just going to use Brexit as an example. There are people who are like, British, I mean, I'm very proud to be British, but Brexit is Brexit, get the foreigners out, you know, that kind of horrible mentality. They don't realise that actually there are people in their life who are close to them, either colleagues they get on well with, neighbours who they have a good camaraderie with, may actually be badly affected by that. And they only think of, you know, immigrants as the people who they claim are coming over here, stealing their jobs, all those negative stereotypes, and they don't look at the wider picture. And Homer didn't do that either until Apu had to say, well, hang on, look, this is actually the reality. You're not looking at this from all angles. And Homer then decides to do everything he can to try and help Apu to become a legal citizen, to help him to stay. And it was beautiful. After that point, it was really lovely to see, but it was still quite negative and quite emotional. And I imagine if you were on the receiving end, like Apu was, obviously I can't speak from that angle. I was born and raised in Britain. So like Brexit never affected me like that. It did in other ways. But if you were like that, or, you know, if anything like that happens and you're on the negative end of that, I imagine that's terrifying. Not just the whole upheaval of your life, but the not knowing which way people are going to vote, the horrible, disgusting things people are saying to you or about you, and then having somebody like Homer coming along and standing up and doing the right thing is just lovely to see, and it's really beautiful. It's also quite funny. There are obviously comedic moments in this that help to make it easier to watch and more digestible. If it was feeling like it was a complete lecture, I feel like the people who need to watch this episode wouldn't retain the information. And The Simpsons is very good at doing that. It does deliver quite important messages, often through comedy, so that it's easier to digest and absorb. I think it's a really important episode. I think it's very well done. I think it's very moving and very effective, and unfortunately still very relevant. It is quite entertaining when it can be, and very moving at other times. As I said, from the entertainment perspective, it's not one of my personal favourites, but I definitely think Much Ado About Nothing is a really important episode of The Simpsons.